The Yellow Brick Road. This video does not reflect the actual views of real people. These are actors playing a role to entertain audiences. No persons or animals were harmed in the making of this video. Gosh, I love YouTube and I love Google.
Alright, we are back. Let's go full screen on this fucking thing. We changed our mind. We're gonna take you all the way through all the way up until the press conference by the Justice Department.
So law enforcement's really looking for actions, not just thoughts and words. They're really focused on deeds as well and the planning. So yes, this van gives us a lot of indicators.
He's probably not the only one with images like that on his van in America.
That's right. So we know that the suspect, Cesar Sayoc, is now in FBI custody. What are the kind of questions they'll be asking him?
Well, first, when they made the determination, and we don't know what led to the probable cause to decide to arrest, whether it was a piece of forensics, whether it was a tip, whether it was a combination of things, video evidence. Once they made that decision to arrest that he was not going to be free to go after this contact, he's in effect in custody. And so the Miranda warnings are going to be triggered when they start to question him. That is custodial interrogation. That is what Miranda talks about. So they're going to have to give him those warnings. Now, there is a public safety exception that the FBI has worked with and looked at the law about, and it is known as the Quarles exception. It goes back a couple of decades where there might be an immediate threat or risk to public safety, where they can just push past the Miranda warnings and ask him questions. And I think there's probably been discussions about the Quarles exception today and yesterday.
There's no way he got those letters to New York by just mailing them.
That additional destructive devices are out there in the mail chain. So it'll be interesting to hear how this plays out. It could be, and I've had this happen in cases of my own, where somebody you think is going to tell you, I have nothing to say, let me call an attorney, and they will sit and lay out the entire scope of the case and their criminality and confess. Others are different, and they're going to invoke, and the FBI will proceed on. They'll be getting search warrants and executing them today. They'll be looking at his digital footprint. They will be building this case apart from a confession. My guess is they don't need a confession. By the end of today, they will have a mountain of evidence that points at the person in their custody.
Ron, if you don't mind standing by, I want to also bring in CBS News White House correspondent Weijia Zhang, who joins me now from the White House. Weijia, we heard from the president today. What was his reaction to the arrest?
Well, today his reaction was a firm one. He took an aggressive stance, applauding law enforcement immediately, cheering them on, saying that they worked so quickly to apprehend a suspect. And he once again called for unity and said that Americans must unify. We must show the world that we are united together in peace and love and harmony. But, Rena, this is just his latest. And what we have seen since the president first publicly started making remarks about these waves of bombs is a fluctuation, which began on Wednesday night in central Wisconsin during a Make America Great Again rally. And as someone who has been to several of his rallies, that one was very different because he stuck to the issues. He used a almost conciliatory tone. He talked about unifying and condemning violence and calling for peace. And he acknowledged himself that the tone was very different, saying, I'm behaving so nice. Have you ever seen this before? Let's all be nice and get along. But then he got on Twitter, and in the days following, the past couple days, we have seen him this morning at 3:15 in the morning tweeting about one of the recipients of these suspicious packages, CNN, talking about how they're low rated and that they are blaming him for the current spate of bombs. In another tweet, he very much more bluntly said a very big part of the anger we see today in our society is caused by the mainstream media that I refer to as fake news. And then this morning, not so long before he made these remarks, Rena, in the East Room, he was tweeting and he put quotes around the word bomb.
Hey, if you're in the chat, let us know what you think.
Stuff. And
There's
so
some fishy
that
shit in
certainly
here.
does not translate to
You have
the
other information, let it
seriousness
be known.
of what we are experiencing here, what these victims are experiencing, what the country is experiencing. So he seemed to sort of make light of this somehow by putting quotes and referring to this crisis as bomb stuff. But certainly in his most recent remarks in the East Room, where he is here at the White House, he was firm and committed to finding the suspect and to holding them accountable.
So do you think it erases sort of the critics who have been so harsh towards the president, saying he hasn't been sensitive enough on this issue if he's still tweeting all this out?
Well, it's hard to make that argument because it wasn't that long ago that he was using that very different tone. And so that's what we'll be watching now, is after making these remarks
usual, they
in
use
the
whatever
East Room,
incident
how his
to shit on
behavior
Trump.
will be going forward
And
as law
I'm
enforcement
not in favor of
works
Trump at all, but
diligently to try to piece
that does
what
seem to
happened
happen
together
with
as
any
they
issue.
try to confirm a motive for this, because as we have seen,
It's like they're
you know,
still-
obviously it is
It's like they're still
politically
running the
motivated,
2016
just
election
based on
over in their mind
you know, what we saw of
repeatedly.
his van, the different stickers on his van,
Right.
his commitment to the Trump
Watched him, like,
campaign.
impeach him on,
And
like,
so,
the last month
you know,
of his-
when
of
there
him
is a
being in
time of
office.
crisis like this, that's when
Say,
people
"Oh,
are
I'm leaving
watching
anyways."
President Trump even closer than usual. And what we have seen is a discrepancy in his language and how he is treating this. So we can only wait, but I certainly do not think just because he took this more firm approach just now, it washes away the other remarks that he has made, and the sort of blame game that he is playing, trying to blame the media for what has happened here.
You know, the president
You guys are
suggested
doing
that
that to
the
him.
focus on this is
First of
really
all.
hurting
Second of all,
Republicans ahead of midterms.
You
What's
guys
his
lack
argument?
credibility completely
Well,
to me.
he said that there was a lot of momentum,
As
and that
Jimmy
everyone
Dore
was
would say,
talking
there's a
about
reason why people
politics
go
and
to
the
YouTube
midterm
for their
elections,
news.
and sort of the growth that he believes
And
Republicans
also the
have
people that were
heading to
sent
the polls. And
the
he said
devices
that clearly changed,
all
and
lack
that the news
credibility to me
cycle
as well.
was taken over by this
Like the
story.
two newest ones,
and
James
so
Clapper,
that was
who
his
lied on
argument,
the
and he
stand.
was encouraging Republicans
He
to
lied
go
under
out
oath.
and vote.
And Cory
Of
Booker,
course, he has
who's
several
a-
other things that he is trying to call attention on,
Seems like a
including
whack
sending
person,
troops to the southern
a whack
border, as he has made
personality.
immigration one of his key campaign issues
why the
heading
Florida
into the
dude,
midterm.
Andrew
So
Gillum,
I think we were seeing so
lost
many
credibility
images
because
of
he
the
took pictures with
caravan,
Cory Booker. Everyone's like,
and
"Oh, shit, is he
understanding what
corrupt
he was
too?"
doing, what actions he was calling for
If you take
in
a
order
picture
to
with
handle
someone,
that
and
situation.
all of a sudden
But
that person
I
loses
think he
credibility,
feels like
that means
those were
there's
replaced by
something to look at,
stories
right?
about
him?
tracking down
Yeah.
whoever was responsible for sending these suspicious packages. And so perhaps that's why he used the quotes bomb stuff. You know, we can never begin to analyze why he says what he does. But certainly it's clear he was annoyed that attention was being taken away from the midterm race.
Weijia Zhang, Weijia, thank you very much for joining us.
Sure.
At least he didn't see me yet.
We're going to take a quick break. We've got more coverage of this
Can't see
new
you.
arrest when we return.
Only
Can't
unless
see-
you snitch and
Can't see
tell him
fake
that
people. Huh?
if you snitch and tell him that I'm there, that's the only way he'll...
Oh, snitching when I do it, right? We'll get someone on here. We count how many times you've done that.
Alright, their feed will be back, I guess. They're shilling out their own information like I shill out on Twitter. Guys, any thoughts, anything in the chat? Would love to hear. Any arguments, any information we're missing? Conspiracy, mainstream, doesn't matter. Just want to hear what other people think about this, because to me this seems awfully suspect.
That seems like bullshit.
Awfully suspect.
Come on, it's cartoony. You got a van with Trump on it and all these like over-the-top imagery. Then you got inside, you know, the van is a CNN guy with a red little red circle and an arrow. No, like a line across the guy's face. It's like, really?
How do you get away with driving that shit around all the time? You'd think there'd be photos everywhere of it, but maybe there's multiple people, a shitload of people that do that.
Right.
Where it's normal.
He's from Plantation, Florida. I'm not saying he's a plant. I'm not even saying like, oh, he's not even a real person. You know, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's like, well, this stuff seems really fucking off.
You got caught in Plantation, Florida,
Whatever. Yeah, my fault. Yeah. See.
which is ironic and funny as well.
Yeah.
It's like a double entendre too. It was a place called Plantation. Meanwhile, you had like slavery there and shit.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun. Hey, want to join me on my channel and we can stream and talk about this? It'll give you some free promotion and give me new friends. I would if our internet would hold up. Right now we're in red right now. We are in the red. But please plug your shit. Yeah, type it out in the chat room like where to find your stuff at. That's the best I can do.
We are continuing to follow the apprehension of this suspect who was arrested, 56-year-old Cesar Sayoc. He was picked up in the Plantation, Florida area. We are continuing to stay on this story and bring you the latest. I want to bring back in Ron Hosko. He's a CBS News security consultant and a former assistant director of the FBI. Ron, do you think that authorities will rule out that he didn't have any help? Is there a way to tell this early on?
Well, I think, Rita, they will be looking very closely at
And hey, Chairview,
communications have been.
we will subscribe to your channel
got
now,
onto
just
their
because
radar yesterday.
for no
I would think
reason
they
at
would have
all.
issued subpoenas for
Going to chill out and just
telecommunications
subscribe.
providers, internet service providers.
Don't subscribe to
yesterday.
us, otherwise I lose
He started
credibility.
looking better and better to them as a subject, and they are poring over his communications.
All right, how do we do that?
That would be to include any kind of electronic device that allows them to track where has he been in the last week, 2 weeks, has he communicated with, looking at friends, family, co-workers, to understand what does his network look like, try to interview all of them as quickly as possible to see, is there a possibility that he was very close to somebody who is like-minded,
Now we
who
just
was
left to use the
always
internet
with him,
then.
that would have been trusted enough to engage in this
Stream
sort of
onto
a
his.
plot. They'll be looking at that with great urgency.
we don't have a
Probably
camera,
started,
which
as
is
I said, as soon as he started to really warm up on the list of
You have
possibles.
to uncover your
They
camera
would
and all that
have
shit.
been looking at to issue those subpoenas and start looking at that quietly
There's a
as
chat
soon as
box.
they can get it.
Oh, you just use a microphone.
And so they'll know, I think, very quickly, are we dealing with a person who is acting entirely by themselves, or is this person in regular communication? Have they been texting with somebody? What do those texts look like? Law enforcement, depending on the device.
Oh, we might be able to
has the
jump in with
tools
like an audio
to take
feed with a
cell
second
phone
laptop.
and exploit it very
You want to keep
quickly.
ours running.
Take a look
Yeah.
at it,
Till-
at
at
a
least
high
till the
level,
press
what are we
conference starts.
dealing with, who are the communications, what's the frequency of communications, and at least give themselves some level of confidence that this is likely a person acting alone.
Ron, are you surprised that law enforcement was able to apprehend a suspect so quickly?
I was just hearing somebody comment.
Don't worry
this
about
morning,
Chairview. We will subscribe
an
regardless.
anchor
That's what we
asking
do.
a
We
guest,
show.
when do we start to get impatient?
Doing this?
And actually, that question indicated that he was starting to get impatient, and that he suspected.
What are
others
you
would
are
be.
you using
And I know there's
Google
been
Hangouts or
predictions out
Skype
there.
or something?
The FBI has dealt
Chair.
with the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, that took years to
That's right.
unravel and figure out, and ultimately took his brother and the publication of his manifesto to
We
read
can't do it
that and
through
say, I think I know who this is. It's my brother.
We're already.
And then you have
out
cases
with
like down in Austin earlier this
Yeah,
year
so this.
that took about 3
Strictly
weeks from
audio.
beginning to end.
But even that.
And so, I
to go
had
upstairs
great
for
confidence
that.
law enforcement would find the subject and
the
apprehend
Wi-Fi
them.
is not great.
But the timetable is always dicey, even with 10 or 12 devices. If he didn't leave enough clues, if he didn't leave fingerprints, if he worked in a sterile environment from beginning to end, that could have been accomplished. Fortunately, it likely wasn't accomplished.
Ron, if you could hang on for just a second, I want to bring in our next guest, Brad Galvin. He's the retired resident agent in charge for the ATF. He's also an independent security consultant. He joins me now by phone. Brad, as we're talking about this investigation, what happens now at this point?
Well, now the investigators are going to try to
looks like Vanderlei Silva.
all the components, all the evidence that has been collected from the numerous devices that they
I can't tell if he has, no pun intended, like a Caesar or like a fade or something, or he has slick back shit. It looks weird. You said it looked drawn on.
I'm not sure what they have already. They must have.
He's got that Carlos Boozer fade.
Carlos Boozer. DNA.
Look that up.
So at this point, they're going to start putting all the links together. They're going to tie everything together. There's still a lot of work to be done. They have to catalog
yo, is your hair running?
of some of the devices
Is that black liquid
recovered.
running down the
They have
side
to
of
walk
your
those
face?
back, and then
while
the
you're
search warrants that they're going to serve at his residence, any storage facilities he may have, and his vehicle, they're going to look
You got, like,
for
Banksy to
similar
do his
components
hair.
to try to tie them to any of the components, the packaging, the internal components, the explosive filler that may have been used, any of the wiring to see if the wiring matches up. So there's a lot of work to be done. The PVC piping that was used, they're going to see if they have some similar devices.
Brad, you talk about tying the bombing components to the suspect. If you were questioning him right now, what would you want to ask him?
Go get the LeBron done.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you want to ask him, if he's going to talk to you, you want to ask him,
Why
how
can't I
he
see my
made it.
reflection
You have a
inside
pretty
of
good
it?
idea because you have intact devices.
going on with
But you
that?
want to know if there are any additional devices. Did you send any others out there? Are there still other devices that are in the
They look
mail
like
system
robots.
that potentially could
someone
cause
just
some
robot head.
You
They look like
also want to know
freezing,
what his intent
man.
was. What is his intent to actually detonate a device? As of today, we have no detonations, which is unusual. So did he create these devices with the intent of functioning them, or was it more to terrorize, which he was very successful at? So I would want to know that. Are there additional devices out there? Who were they mailed to? Who were they sent to? And then you try to get those out of the public area as fast as you can.
There were those pipe bombs, supposed pipe bombs, that were also sent. What do you make about the nature of those particular pipe bombs?
What are we doing?
Pipe bombs are, in my experience, the most common type of explosive or improvised explosive device that I saw throughout my 30-year career. They're simple, they're unsophisticated. You can make them from things that line around your house, go to the Home Depot,
Joseph.
or any hardware store or electronic store. Very crude and unsophisticated, but extremely lethal and dangerous. And you can make them as sophisticated as you want to if you add, and his vehicle, they're going to look for similar components to try to tie them.
I'll be right back.
Public area as fast as you can.
There were those pipe bombs, supposed pipe bombs, that were also sent. What do you make about the nature of those particular pipe bombs?
I just want to look at the actual photos, sort of freeze it on there.
Or improvised explosive device.
That's the James Clapper one. I guess they found that in Florida, right?
That I saw throughout my 30-year career. They're simple, they're unsophisticated.
There's a Joe Biden one. If they didn't find these in Florida, if they made it through the Postal Service somehow, then there's something way off. Because I don't see any markings, really. Other than that yellow strip on there.
You can make them from things that line around your house, go to the Home Depot, or any hardware store or electronic store. Very
I don't know who that one's sent to.
but extremely lethal and dangerous. And you can make them as sophisticated as you want to if you add electronic componentry, circuit boards.
That's the John Brennan one, CNN one, that made it all the way to New York without any postal markings on it.
You talk about these devices, simple, unsophisticated, but potentially very lethal. In your experience, why do these suspects put these out in the mail?
Well, that is one way of creating distance. Generally, these individuals don't do this with the intent of getting caught. So they'll send them in the mail, and they'll try to use deception, fake addresses. They may drive out of their local area to mail them, to try to disassociate themselves with those devices. Other times they'll use, instead of the mail, they'll just drop them off, as we saw in Austin. He actually employed both methods, both common carrier, and then he would place them, creating a victim-activated device when it functioned when someone touched it. But the mail system is just trying to create distance and not get caught.
Brad, very grateful you can join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rena.
You bet. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We've got much more coverage of the arrest out of Florida. We'll continue in just a moment. You're streaming CBS.
We'll be right back. Not us, CBS. They plug their shit.
It's always wartime shit.
What was Rogan and Doug Stanhope? They're like high on acid or something, watching the Iraq War about to begin, and they're like, "Oh, this is like the Super Bowl, man." I was like, "Fuck, that's funny."
Make America sane again, Scott.
Yeah. We need more psychology, as Carl Jung would say, like in the fucking 40s or 50s or something.
Yeah.
Like he knew all the way the fuck back then.
Honestly, it must have been kind of creepier back then. It's like everyone's like, you know, pretend to. Oh, hey, Timmy. Hey, Dad. Looks like a great day for fishing.
Oh, we're gonna react to this black pill video. We use a culture and genetics, and then you can fill in the rest from that.
Sure, but we're actually the Titans.
Yeah. So yeah, with the whole MAGA bomber thing, as low in credibility as it seems so far, because they come out with some, they have to plug accomplices somehow to make it credible for me. But hold on, there's, in my mind, like bubbling ideologies that we make videos on that I think you guys should pay attention to, regardless of political affiliation. This is more of like a life stance that these guys make, and we critique the videos. So
It's like, it has to be Russia.
check out my back catalog.
It has to be Russia. It has to be.
What am I looking at?
Oh, you can watch it for free.
Okay.
We are continuing to follow the
already
investigation into the
No, bro.
bombs delivered to top Democratic political figures and critics of the president. Today,
Incredible.
speaking at the White House, the president called the mailing of bombings terrorizing acts that have no place in our country.
I'd like to begin today's remarks by providing an update on the packages and devices that have been mailed to high-profile figures throughout our country and a media organization. I am pleased to inform you that law enforcement has apprehended the suspect and taken him into custody. It's an incredible job by law enforcement. We've carried out a far-reaching federal, state, and local investigation to find the person or persons responsible for these events. These terrorizing acts are despicable and have no place in our country. No place. I've instructed authorities to spare no resource or expense in finding those responsible and bringing them to swift and certain justice.
I'm going to be incredibly
We
vague.
will prosecute
Incredibly vague.
them, him, her, whoever it may be, to the fullest extent of the law.
Heard this before.
We must never allow political violence to take root in America. Cannot let it happen. and I'm committed to doing everything in my power as president to stop it. And to stop
No, you're not.
Stop it now. I have just concluded a briefing with the Department of Justice following the apprehension of the suspect. I want to applaud the FBI, Secret Service, the Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, the NYPD, and all law enforcement throughout the entire country, incredible partners. These people have worked so hard, and to have done it so quickly, it's looking like it's a needle in a haystack. How do you do this so quickly? They've done an incredible job.
I wonder how they find them so quickly. If this isn't
But a bottom line is that Americans must unify.
telling, I don't know what
And
it
we must
is.
show the world that we are united together in peace and love and
Especially
harmony as fellow
certain parts of the
American
media
citizens.
portraying this as,
There is no country
oh,
like
look
our
what
country.
Trump's doing. He's
And
blaming the
every day we
media.
are showing the world just how truly great we are. So,
Like, even if, yeah, again,
you are
even if
really
someone
very
did do
special
this,
people.
it's like,
I
well, look
wanted
what you
to say
guys
that
do.
Before our little
Yeah.
talk.
It's
I
easy to see how
appreciate
silly
the time
dumb
you've
guy
given
would
me,
do this
and
shit, you know.
wait,
At the same
one
time, I
day,
don't think
one of you is going to be standing.
it was really like that. Come on.
This morning, the
Bomb
president took to
Thursday
Twitter to
out.
criticize
Another
the
one
media
off.
coverage. He tweeted,
They're all
Republicans
suspect.
are doing so
They're
well
all
in early voting
conveniently
and at the
mailed in a
polls, and
specific
now
way,
this
which means
bomb
that guy
stuff
must have
happens,
super speed.
and the momentum greatly
It's like-
slows. News, not
CNN
talking
literally
politics.
opened one and took
Well,
pictures
this comes
of it.
after he slammed CNN on Twitter in the middle of the night for criticizing him for the bombs. He says comparisons to 9/11 or the Oklahoma City bombing are ridiculous. Joining me now, Julia Manchester. She's a reporter for The Hill. Julia, thank you for joining us. I want to start ridiculous. Joining me now, Julia.
Funny how low-rated CNN and others can criticize me and even blame me for the current state of the bombings. It's ridiculous you compare this to September 11th and Oklahoma City bombing, yet I criticize them and they go wild and scream. It's just not presidential. Mind you, the 9/11 and the Oklahoma City bombings are incredibly suspect.
Yeah.
The official
To
statements where that is.
9/11 or the Oklahoma City bombing are ridiculous.
The events before
Joining me
and
now,
after.
Julia Manchester. She's a reporter for The Hill. Julia, thank you for joining us.
An
I want to
incredible
start
reporter.
on the president's latest comments today.
The Hill
He
seems
tweeted
to be a
out
theme
a little bit
for
earlier
CBS.
that the bombs were a terrorizing act. and he
By the way,
praised
someone
law
from The
enforcement.
Hill
What stood out to
is
you
the one that
from his comments this morning?
Answered the question about the whole Russia thing, Russia connection.
Trump and how he's reacted to these
Russia sent out
developments
so
over
many
the past
memes
week.
that-
You know, we've seen earlier in the week when he first addressed the bombings at the White or the suspicious packages. He essentially
influenced
said, he
somebody
repeated
into
this
bombing
call
other
to
people.
unify and
Yeah,
that we need to
somehow.
tone down the rhetoric. However, he then appears at campaign rallies, which are really where he feels most comfortable, where he's unscripted, where he can say whatever he essentially wants, and he really goes after his
making
critics
shit up.
and CNN,
You hear
which is
this?
a news organization that has, tangled with the
just said?
president, and the two
Go back.
enjoy a very contentious relationship. So you're seeing comfortable where he's unscripted, where he bombings at the White or the suspicious packages. He essentially said, he repeated this call to unify and that we need to tone down the rhetoric. However, he then appears at campaign rallies, which are really where he feels most comfortable, where he's unscripted, where he can say whatever he essentially wants, and he really goes after his critics and CNN, which is a news organization that has, tangled with the president, and the two enjoy a very contentious relationship. So you're seeing two different sides of the president today, but it was interesting to watch these remarks today because he was calling for unity, he was calling for toned down rhetoric to really come together. However, he didn't really name anyone who was shipped a package over the past week who received these packages. He referred to them as public figures. He referred to CNN as a media organization. So very interesting how he would address that, and it would be, I would wonder how that would play out if it were Republicans or a more friendlier news organization to the president who had received such packages, how that would play out with him.
The president didn't really go into detail about the suspect, the images on the van that were taken by the Fed, the images of him at a rally that show him side by side, right behind him. What questions does that raise, and how much liability, if anything, should the President of the United States have for a man who randomly shows up at his rally with a white van of images?
Well, you know, clearly the president can't control every single person who appears at his rallies. However, he probably doesn't want to, for political and publicity purposes, really tie himself to this person or give any illusion of connecting the two. He doesn't want to publicize those connections.
Your job is to connect
I'm not surprised the president didn't bring that up because I don't think it would play well for him in the public eye.
You mentioned that you don't think it would play well in the public eye, and that could be a reason why he's not mentioning this. But do we have a sense of how an event like this, a person who really feels, identifies closer with the Republican Party, appears to have some animosity towards Democrats, how can that affect midterms at this point?
You know, I think it really shows how divided this country at this point, and it's nothing new.
No, let's not talk about the situation at hand. Let's really talk about the president.
Shooting over a year ago, that was violence from the other side. So I think these events show how deeply divided our country is and how visceral I think politics has become to so many people.
Scenario that we're looking
at
right
it'll
now.
be interesting to see how voters approach midterms. I don't think this is going to necessarily drive down turnout.
We talk about that shit. How the fuck did this guy mail that?
Voters who, you know, might be sick of the constant, you know, intense negative rhetoric coming out of our political discourse these days. You know, I think they're going to take note of that.
The two bombs that were found today were addressed to James Clapper and Democratic Senator Cory Booker. When you look at all of these different mailing bombs, you know, what are really the targets here? Are they similar to the other packages that were
corrupt politicians? And,
yes, they are similar. In these,
political figures?
James Clapper and Senator Cory Booker have been critical of the president publicly, and the president has been critical of them. This is what all of these recipients of these packages have in common.
People that call themselves progressives,
former First Lady Hillary Clinton, as well as the Obamas and the Clintons.
Let's see. George Soros, most likely corrupt. Mr. Biden, probably corrupt. I heard Cory Booker, suspect as fuck. Maxine Waters, right?
Yeah.
Corrupt.
Well, Maxine Waters, let me go into more detail. Maxine Waters is the one that said it was cool to harass or, you know, protest people while they're at lunch or dinner or something at restaurants.
Yeah.
Cory Booker, sort of a fake progressive who's like, you know, pretending to be for like Medicare for all, but everyone knows that it's not going to pass, so he's just using it to get clout. A lot of progressive shit on him. Eric Holder, I don't even think I need to say anything there. Attorney General for Barack Obama, sketchy individual. Barack Obama, sketchy individual.
Joe Biden
turned 2 wars into 8. Barack Obama.
Yeah.
All right. His vice president, creepy Uncle Joe Biden. Robert De Niro, actor, gives no reasons why he says fuck Trump. Just says the same mainstream news narrative.
So fuck him too.
James Clapper lied under oath about spying on Americans.
Yeah.
Never got arrested for it. George Soros, in the conspiracy sense, is linked to, you know, random revolts, Antifa.
Yeah.
I believe the Ukrainian crisis. I think Ukrainian rebellion or whatever.
I think so.
He was linked to that. Hillary Clinton. Do I need to say anything? Honestly. And also John Brennan. If you're CIA, they're going to look at you sideways.
Come
regardless.
on. Former CIA director. You know, what does that say?
And he was on Bill Maher saying a whole bunch of bullshit.
Okay. And you got Mrs. Clinton. Let's see. Dieter?
Dieter 006 us.
Don't be a pussy. Just open the package and make America great again. America.
Well, CNN did open the package and took photos of it. That's protocol. It's like, this might be a bomb. Let's open it. Mm-hmm. Okay, it is a bomb. Let's take pictures of it. Let's not leave the facility. Let's take pictures.
None of the bombs went off.
It's called courageous journalism. God. Gee.
Courageous?
as well as, other, James Clapper, John Brennan, Eric Holder, Maxine Waters, they all have that in common. In terms of CNN, clearly the president, as I said before, enjoys a very contentious relationship with the network. So these are figures in an organization that has more so of a negative relationship with the president.
The Attorney General vowed to dedicate every available resource and bring those responsible to justice. So through all of this, have we seen a confident administration response?
I think it depends who you would speak to on that. At times when President Trump is calling for unity and more of his scripted responses, I would say that's more of a confident response. Clearly, the Justice Department is giving a very different response. However, it really does not compare to the president's response to all of this on Twitter, calling it the bomb thing, saying it could distract from midterms and it's distracting from positive coverage to the Republican Party. That really plays differently from the rest of his administration's responses. So once again, you're seeing two different sides to the administration's responses. It's the formal response and the Twitter response.
I want to play some sound for you from Democratic Senator Mark Warner. This is what he had to say on CBS this morning.
I've been very concerned about the president's tone, not being willing to call out and call up, for that matter, the two former
This is
presidents
them placing the blame on Trump.
This kind of attack. Yeah. And one of the things about this president is I don't think he understands that words matter.
You say words matter. The president's critics have really
We're not
been
Trump
critical
supporters, but
they wanted to see more of a
pretty
response.
blatant.
Could phone calls
And there are guys just making their careers
Obama
off
or
doing
the
this.
Clintons have really made a
And on the
difference?
opposing side too, as well.
I think it would have shown
All Democrats, all leftists are evil.
Anybody that doesn't have a bias is clearly going to see how
However, we understand that the
none of these
president has
sources
a
are
very
credible.
negative relationship
None of
with
these mainstream
former
sources are
President
credible at
Clinton
all.
and former President
There's
Obama.
people
There's
making
a
careers
lot of
off
bad
this shit,
blood,
for
especially
sure.
I would say, with the Clintons and coming so close off of the 2016 elections.
And you got these fans out there with their phones.
To me, we haven't really seen the president reach
oh my
out
God,
to them,
Dad's here.
much over the course
You
of
see
his
this.
administration, so this isn't surprising. However, with
What's funny
something
is the
that
guy
could
is
have
Native
been,
American,
as it could have been,
apparently.
the attempted assassination
Cesar
of two former
Sayoc
presidents of the United States,
is
that's
Native
something
American,
that's very serious,
I
and I
think.
think with
He's
another
secretly Evangelist
administration,
Silva.
you would have seen more of an outreach.
He's secretly Carlos.
Julie Manchester, grateful you could join us to discuss all this. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, coming up after the break, we have the very latest on the suspect in custody for mailing a series of bombs across 5 states. We'll hear from a security expert ahead. This is CBSN, always on.
Be right back.
I'm hearing things like former Cesar Sayoc is a former Bernie campaign worker. I don't know how credible that is.
Yeah.
It could just be a way to shield Trump. Who knows? I hate these fucking political games, man. Fucking hate this shit.
You gotta remember back to things like Sirhan.
But even then, the political fervor wasn't like that. Wasn't the way it is now. And also, the guy wasn't like really political at all, really.
It don't matter.
Like this seems to be able to place divisions in place this team versus this team. I can't wait to hear what the fucking Justice Department says. They better have some solid evidence, otherwise people are gonna go apeshit. Well, non-brainwashed people and Trump supporters are gonna go apeshit. Right? There's a lot of team playing. If this was in the reverse, it'd be Democratic, heavily Democratic fans and unbiased people going crazy. And the brainwashed Trump side would be, oh, nothing's happening here, there's nothing here. Or, not that, it'd be, like, oh, they're trying to kill all of us. It's Q. Q told us about this.
Police have a suspect in custody in connection with a series of mail bombs sent to critics of President Trump. Here he is, 56-year-old Cesar Sayoc. He's being questioned now by the FBI. We know he has a criminal record for a previous threat in 2002, and we also know he does have ties to New York. He was picked up this morning at an AutoZone store in Plantation, Florida, just north of Miami.
Other people.
Law enforcement sources say
that's what ties to New York better mean. Otherwise, none of this makes sense, and people are going to tear this story apart.
Pictures of the van posted before today's events show that it's covered in complete pro-Trump imagery. There are also photos of Democrats like Hillary Clinton in the crosshairs. Well, this comes after at least 12 bombs were mailed across the country to prominent Democrats and Trump critics. Devices found this morning also targeted Senator Cory Booker and former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper. Joining me now,
liar and liar.
CBS News,
Let's
law
be honest
enforcement
here.
and security analyst.
If you can't handle that, then you shouldn't be watching the stream. If you can't handle unbiased opinions, you should leave the stream, because all these people on this map right now look suspect.
Start to begin the process of securing search warrants for the subject's home, vehicle, which obviously they have in custody, they have in possession right now, any computer, any phones, any devices that he may have, to start seeking solid evidence regarding what will firmly tie him, to the packages, the suspicious packages, the bombs that have been sent out over the last several days.
So when you look at this, is it possible that there could potentially be more bombs out there? Could these still keep showing up weeks on end?
Most certainly, Rena, and that's something we need to be very careful about. We firmly believe that this is don't know this person. This is a person of interest. Apparently, law enforcement has secured a certain amount of DNA evidence, which would tie him to one or more of the devices. But that doesn't mean he's the only person. It doesn't mean we're free of copycats at this point, and we don't know how many he sent. So clearly, we are going to be, very, very cautious in the days to come about others that may come up.
When you see the political imagery that this van was completely covered in, images of the people who were targeted by the bombs, specifically in the crosshairs, what does that tell law enforcement?
What it tells us, honestly, what it tells us is really it's a reflection of the divide that we have in this country and the disdain that one side has against another. That's what it
this
tells
is the political talking points.
All the time from a law enforcement perspective. This is apparent.
Doesn't sound like an honest opinion. It's because of the divide.
See that we have someone
vague.
That side, that
I don't know what that means.
Or a left side of the aisle for that matter. That just,
I always thought just crazy was crazy.
This much disdain.
They'll figure out any mode, any ideology to do something crazy with.
Spells out what we have up against us right now in our country. This is an example.
How will investigators go about piecing through some sort of a motive for this suspect?
That's going to come from the evidence that we're looking at right now, and that's going to be his.
The motive's already so blatant.
Now, someone like this, you put him at 56 years old. Chances of him being a social media giant are probably slim, but they'll still scour to see if there's any traces of him on social media. A lot of this, I would tend to think, is going to come from the search warrant of his home or homes.
People already found social media shit on Twitter right now.
So,
once again, their story, this isn't looking good for their story.
It would not be uncommon to find a plethora of evidence inside the person's home. Even mosaics built up on walls that show disdain and even hatred towards the individuals that we saw these bombs go to.
Paul, at this point, if you were part of this investigation, what would you be looking to? What would you be asking?
Well, The comment that certainly, based on my experience, for me, it's going to be the interview. Now, clearly, there's a lot of evidence to be gathered, and agencies will work together to do that. But for me, it's going to be the interview. It's going to be that solid conversation between this individual and investigators, and establishing a rapport with them. And then once that rapport is established, to see how much he's willing to talk. And the interesting part, Rita, about individuals like this is they typically like to talk. Now, if he doesn't lawyer up, the chances of him, we get a good solid group of investigators talking to him, or even one that he relates to, the chances of him wanting to brag about what he's done are pretty good.
Interesting to hear you say that they often like to brag about what they did and talk. Paul Violas, we will be checking in with you throughout the afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
Well, over the past week, we've been hearing from some of the intended recipients of these explosive packages. Here's how 3 prominent former Obama administration officials reacted to the threat.
We've got to turn off this hate machine.
They're haters.
Come together, the American public, and all over the nation. People want us to be more civil. People want us to choose hope over hate. They want us to choose for real. I mean, it's guttural. People understand that, and words matter, folks. Words matter. And
turning this on Trump again.
It's disturbing to think that political figures are having to deal with this issue. It's personal, obviously, for me, since one was addressed to me, but I'm also concerned about
you helped create it.
Who had things
you should be dealing with it.
And it's unfortunately, I think, a sign of
now it bombs and
shit,
but with the ideas that are out there.
Try to figure out a way in which we can get beyond these kinds of things.
This is definitely domestic terrorism. No question.
If you guys are so ignorant of why people dislike you,
you know what they're doing. Thank God, there have been no injuries or deaths from this, and I guess from what I read, there is some question about whether these things are actually functional or not. You obviously have to assume
you guys know what they're doing, dude.
And whether or not this is just only intended to sow fear, intimidate, that sort of thing, or they're for real. And I actually don't know that.
Especially when they say the same shit. Words matter. I'm not 8, okay?
This is not going to...
I don't know why they'd want to attack us. It must be Trump.
Actor and outspoken critic of the administration, Robert De Niro, released a statement earlier saying, "I thank God no one's been hurt, and I thank the brave and resourceful security and law enforcement people for protecting us. There's something more powerful than bombs, and that's your vote. People must vote."
Fuck Robert De Niro.
After the break, we have the very latest on
I don't understand why people
suspect.
don't like me.
Officials from the Justice Department are also holding a briefing, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll have full live coverage ahead. You're streaming CBSN, always on.
Oh, he's just an actor. Look into Angelina Jolie in the CIA or FBI. Look what they tried to do. Okay, look into that.
I have no idea.
It's on Corbett's channel. It's the shit that you don't pay attention to. New World next week or whatever.
I'll watch everyone every so often.
You told me like I don't even bother really.
Yeah, every so often. But yeah, this is why it is the way it is. Why the world is the way it is. No one steps up and says, "I fucked up here."
No, it's well. I'm gonna say these words.
It's someone else's fault. How'd those bombs get there? It's someone else's fault. I didn't do it.
Fuck these people, man. They know what the fuck they're doing.
An insane response makes sense in an insane world. Straight up. And this is proof of it. These guys, I'm sure they know why people would target them. Why the real reason why their names happen to be the ones sending bombs. But they won't say it.
No.
They won't say, you know, if they've ever done anything wrong that could piss someone off. Now, granted, the actual killer guy, If it's real, the way it is, then I can see why he did it, because of brainwashing. But at the same time, even with the brainwashing, I'm sure he has a shitload of information that says that these guys are corrupt. And it justifies what he does.
But he doesn't.
See, when you have Twitter polls put up that say, is the suspect white or not? It's like, that's beyond, that's not what we're talking about here. It turns into a political game, which turns into a culture game, which turns into Jared fucking Taylor.
Fuck that guy. Fuck JT.
You know, let's be honest, it's what you guys are asking for. A lot of people are asking for this shit. Not everyone, but there's a lot of people asking for these things to happen.
Yeah. I mean, good look. I'm just saying.
These are
CBSN logo. It's the eye. Doesn't like weird you out a little bit.
They're selling you reality TV
Some took them in as pets, but were overwhelmed and set them loose in the
we're talking
Everglades.
about bomb threats and shit.
Ready? Go for the grabs.
This is actually very, very good.
Anyway.
You got that on camera?
You start seeing them selling you pharmaceuticals. They give you a story that depresses you, and then they sell you
Hi, everyone. I'm
pharmaceuticals
Rena
to
Ninen.
fix
Thank you
it.
for joining us.
But,
An arrest has been made in connection with a series of bombs mailed to prominent critics of President Trump. This is a live look from the Justice Department, where we expect Attorney General Jeff Sessions to hold a briefing at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, just about half an hour's time from now. We're going to bring this to you live, but here's what we know so far. This is the suspect, 56-year-old Cesar Sayoc. He was picked up at an AutoZone plantation in Florida. He does have a criminal record, including charges related to a previous threat in 2002. We also know that he does have ties to New York.
Instructing others.
This appears to be his van, and as you can see, it's covered in
Don't do
political
the
images.
existential work.
After the
You're a
arrest,
rat
police
in the
quickly
maze
covered it
without
up with
even
the tarp
realizing it.
before taking it to a nearby FBI field
Basically,
office. A Twitter user took
dictating
a
your
closer
reactions
picture of the van
by
before
changing the
today's
maze
events.
around.
These are photos
A
of
Twitter
President Trump and
viewer.
also messages supporting him, along with images of Hillary
Could have
Clinton
been
and
somebody
others in the
some sort of
crosshairs.
intelligence agency.
The suspect appears to have attended events
I've seen some
supporting the
journalists
president.
do it.
Just saying.
In this video, you see him on the lower left there at a Trump rally in
As far as
2016.
from what I've seen,
He's wearing a Make America
it's fair.
Great
Not.
Again
It's fair.
hat.
It's safe
This
to.
all
It's
comes
never.
after 2 more bombs were discovered this morning. This
Never
was a
unsafe
scene
to
in New
assume
York
some
City
stuff,
earlier where a bomb meant for former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper was discovered at a mail facility. It was addressed to him via CNN.
His name.
Another bomb was found at a mail facility
Clapper.
in Opelika, Florida.
Wiener.
It was intended for New Jersey Democrat Senator Cory Booker. This now brings the total number of bombs that have been discovered to 12.
Like,
They were
people
addressed
don't
to
see
10
how these
separate
people might be
people. All of
targeted by
them
some
have been
silly
frequent
person.
targets of President
Yeah.
Trump. It's not clear if more bombs were sent, but have not yet been found. In tweets this morning, the president blamed
They
the
don't
media
talk
and
about that,
suggested
though.
that the bombs could have an effect on Republicans ahead of midterms.
Do we read this already? All right. Republicans are doing so well in early voting and at the polls, and now this bomb stuff happens, and the momentum greatly slows. News not talking politics. Very unfortunate. What is going on? Republicans go out and vote. I think we read that already.
Yeah.
He struck a different tone again at an event at the White House a short time ago.
I am pleased to inform
We've
you
heard this before.
that law enforcement has apprehended
They're just
the
going to keep
suspect and
relaying
taken
this
him into
over
custody.
and over again, pushing. Oh, ooh, he says this, now he says that. I'm like, how about you talk about the fucking issue? How about you talk about the people who are targeted? There's any reason why they might be targeted. Is it they're corrupt? In any type of way? Who are these people? Why would someone try to take them out? Allegedly, especially with the suspect bombs.
No place in our country.
How did this guy mail them? You know?
No place. I've instructed authorities to spare no resource or expense in finding those responsible and bringing them to swift and certain justice. and we will prosecute
They just say love
them,
you.
him, her, whoever it may be, to the fullest extent of the law.
CBS News correspondent David Bagno is on the phone now. He joins us from Plantation, Florida. David, what's the latest? What have you learned?
I'm looking
It's like an ice cream truck.
it
looks like an ice cream truck driven by a pedophile. Just saying. It's a van. Like, see, we got chocolate and strawberry and.
There is no longer a law enforcement presence at the auto zone. The auto zone is
Called
in
the Trump ice cream
Florida,
truck.
on a somewhat quiet drag. Traffic goes both ways. There's chiropractic clinics. There's a used car lot. There's a community management property agency. Busy, but just random America, right? And then there's the auto zone. The operation seems to have gone off really without a hitch. The FBI moved in. We're told by a witness who saw some of what happened. There were FBI officials, some people wearing NYPD shirts, what appeared to be dozens, as many as 50 or 60 law enforcement agents that moved in and took
They're just relaying
without
shit.
incident. We're told that a flash
Until we find something, we're gonna keep playing this over and over. The only thing that's different is the lady that's talking. What she said, she's saying the same shit.
Put onto the back of a truck.
For people that just are just tuning in.
Presumably to an FBI location.
Also, they're waiting for the press conference.
Apparently unharmed to an FBI facility to be questioned. As of right now, from what we know, the man appears to live in the area of Aventura. It's about 30 minutes, as the crow flies, 30 minutes or so from the auto zone. And from Aventura, it's about 30 minutes to the Opelika mail facility that the FBI had been searching within the last couple of days. So you put a triangle, and it's a pretty close distance from all three facilities. Other than that, we saw AutoZone employees being interviewed. Several of them appear to have come back to work.
There has to be someone helping him out, though. There's no way that the things get to New York. They don't get there through mail like that. And he didn't fly there and fly back all of a sudden.
How could he?
They were coming.
We found out the van.
Was a former FBI, law enforcement official who was right across the street from the auto zone, and
the van runs on
one of
thermite.
my colleagues, and he said,
It's possible he flew there and flew back, but
and then
it's
I could tell the man was
implausible.
being taken into custody. And apparently this happened.
That sounds
right
too
in front
dumb.
of the
Can you do that? You know?
That sounds too dumb for that to happen.
Like drive there, hide the bomb somewhere, and then fly over there. And you can't take a bomb with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very apparent that folks in the area were familiar with this van. Have you heard anything further, David, from law enforcement in South Florida? Do they believe that this was the sole suspect? Is this part of a wider thing? Do we know if they're looking for anybody more?
I don't hear anything.
They haven't said. They haven't said. The agents here have not said anything to us on scene. The president did not allude to that. You know, I can tell you a little bit more about the suspect in question. My colleague Al Ortiz spoke with a man who apparently represents the suspect and has represented him in the past. And some of what he said is that Mr. Cesar always expressed emotion about the institutions of America and felt approved by them, but not necessarily in a political way. The lawyer said that was 10 or so years ago. The lawyer also pointed to what he thought to be a bizarre reason is he just didn't think Mr. Cesar was quite right in his mind. That's according to the lawyer. The lawyer also said Cesar wanted to look younger, so he had his date of birth also. This lawyer, whose name is Scott Lowry, the lawyer said that he represented Cesar in a few cases, one which involved making a threat against the SPL, the Florida Police League, and the case involved a false identification card or driver's license. And the lawyer ended the interview by saying, I felt that he wasn't always right in his mind. He always wasn't in his right mind.
I just got the text.
And,
oh, there's Trillion there.
Things are moving quickly. We've got people in the Aventura area right now looking for his
whole world knows.
Some neighbors. But I've covered a lot of investigations like this. The FBI moves in and takes a high-profile suspect into custody. And if things don't quite move as quickly as this is, we're getting a lot of information on this very quickly. In fact, the suspect seems to have a social media presence. And we're getting more information from there as well.
All right, our David Bagno on the ground in Plantation, Florida. David, we will check in with you throughout the afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I want to bring in CBS News Chief Justice and Homeland Security correspondent Jeff Begays. He joins me now from Washington. Jeff, what more does law enforcement know? How were they able to track him down?
Well, apparently DNA played a role in this. We don't know exactly how at this point, but perhaps we'll find that out in about an hour and a half or so when I go to this news conference at the Department of Justice. You know, as we've been saying all week long, with all of this evidence, you have all of those suspicious packages,
of the guys
the packaging
itself,
the device itself.
What the
Investigators have been able to piece this case together to the point where they arrest a suspect, as they did
like
a
this
few
was some
hours
like
ago.
crazy police work going on.
But as we've
You guys,
noted, they
people
were
on
able to
YouTube
get
figured this out
control of
already.
these suspicious
Yeah,
devices.
I know.
They
And
figured
what
out
is
how to do
happening
this
now
already.
They did this before
this
you.
FBI
Yeah,
lab in Quantico, Virginia, is that they are
It's like the
deconstructing these
fortune
devices,
guys
trying to figure out where the
finding
components
locations
were,
of terrorists before the fucking U.S.
bought
military
from,
does.
Purchased
Like
from,
what?
who purchased them, but also if you look at
No
the
postal
stamps
markings.
there and the packaging.
I don't know
we
what the
have
yellow
been
strip
told
of
by
paper
multiple sources that this is the kind of packaging where you can get
No postal
fingerprints, where you
markings,
can get
just
DNA
stamps.
samples. And so what we're hearing
No
from our
postal
law
markings,
enforcement
just
sources is
stamps.
that Mr.
That one made it
Sayoc
to New
was
York.
arrested in part.
CNN pulled it out of the
DNA,
fucking folder and
played
took
a role
pictures
here.
of it.
So we're going to have to ask more questions about that
These
as we
are
go
X-rays
forward.
of it.
Jeff, you mentioned those packages. Is there still a chance that there might be more packages found in the mail?
Well, yeah, I don't know if we're going to get anybody to say at this point that it's all clear. We thought after a pause early this morning, there was about, 24 hours between the discovery of suspicious packages, and it seemed to just suggest that perhaps all of these suspicious packages had been accounted for, but then as soon as we thought that, you have the two that showed up this morning. The one addressed to James Clapper, the former director of National Intelligence. The other addressed to Cory Booker, Democratic senator from the state.
Why'd you say that
And
name?
so, I don't think you're going to get any public official at this point. And perhaps I'm wrong, but I don't think you'll get any public official to say, hey, this is the all clear, we can all relax. All week long, they have been in this posture of, telling people that if you see something, say something, and to remain vigilant, because even though there have been no injuries, you still have these devices floating around out there. And
if you follow the
components
connections of this
which
list,
could
did
lead
anything
to
corrupt,
injuries, could lead
a bomb
to
might be sent to you.
Fatalities.
If
And
you're
so
Democratic
there has
and
been
done
that
anything
concern
corrupt,
out there.
there's a chance.
Jeff Begayes, we will look forward to hearing more from you, Jeff, as you go to that press conference in just a short while. Thank
Filipino
you, Jeff.
martial art.
We heard from the
founded by
president today.
Bo Sayoc.
What was his reaction to the arrest?
Oh,
well, today
shit.
his reaction was a firm one. He took an aggressive
I knew my
stance,
Twitter,
applauding law enforcement immediately,
my Twitter
cheering
shilling
them
would
on,
pay
saying
off
that they
somehow.
worked so quickly to apprehend a
I'm gonna look that up.
suspect. And he once again called for unity and said that Americans must unify. We must show the world that we are
you a
united
journalist or
together
you just looked that
in
up,
peace and love
Daniel?
and harmony. But, Rena, this is just his latest. And what we have seen since the president first publicly started making remarks about these waves of bombs is a fluctuation, which began on Wednesday night in central Wisconsin during a Make America Great Again rally. And as someone who has been to several of his rallies, that one was very different because he stuck to the issues. He used a almost conciliatory tone. He talked about unifying and condemning violence and calling for peace. And he acknowledged himself that the tone was very different, saying, I'm behaving so nice. Have you ever seen this before? Let's all be nice and get along. But then he got on Twitter. And in the days following, the past couple of days, we have seen him this morning at 3:15 in the morning tweeting about one of the recipients of these suspicious packages, CNN, talking about how they're low rated and that they are blaming him for the current spate of bombs. In another tweet, he much more bluntly said a very big part of the anger we see today in our society is caused by the mainstream media that I refer to as fake news. And then this morning, not so long before he made these remarks, Rena, in the East Room, he was tweeting and he put quotes around the word bomb, quotes, bomb stuff.
I got
and
you.
so that certainly does not translate to the
He looked up and
seriousness
lived there.
of what we are experiencing here, what these victims are experiencing, what the country is experiencing. So he seemed to sort of make light of this somehow
Right now I'm
by
looking
putting
at
quotes and referring to this
Heavy.com.
crisis as bomb stuff.
Yeah, 5 things we know
in his
about.
most recent remarks in the East Room, where he is here at the White House,
Cesar
he was
Cesar
firm
Sayoc.
and committed to finding the suspect.
Of course, they
and
say
to holding them
registered
accountable.
Republican.
So do you think it erases sort of the critics who have
His
been
family was
so
involved in
harsh
fighting the
towards the
Communist
president,
Party
saying he
of the
hasn't been
Philippines.
sensitive enough on this issue if he's still tweeting all this out?
Well, it's hard to make that argument because it wasn't that long ago that he was using that very different tone. And so that's what we'll be watching now, is after making these remarks in the East Room, how
Tweeted
his
his belief
behavior
that
will
Florida
be going
gubernatorial
forward as law
candidate
enforcement
Andrew
works
Gillum was funded by George
diligently
Soros.
to try to piece what happened together.
Andrew
as
Gillum,
they
most
try
likely
to confirm
corrupt,
a motive
pretending
for
to
this,
be progressive.
Because as we have
You know,
seen,
controlled opposition type
obviously
shit.
it is politically
Sounds
motivated,
possible. I don't
just
know.
based on what we saw of his van, the
Jimmy
different
Dore might say
stickers
so.
on his van, his commitment to the Trump campaign. And so, when there is a time of crisis like this, that's when people are watching
Sayoc was
President
charged with
Trump
making a
even
bomb threat
closer
in
than
2002.
usual. And what we have
And,
seen is a discrepancy in his language and how he is treating this. So we can
He was
only
arrested
wait, but
in
I
Broward
certainly
County,
do not
Florida,
think just because he took this more firm
dating
approach
back to
just now,
1991,
it washes away the other
according to
remarks
his court
that he has made, and
The bomb
sort
threat
of
he
blame
made
game
was
that he
in
is
Dade
playing,
County, Florida,
trying to blame the
in
media
2002.
for what has happened here.
He was
The
sentenced,
president
for some
suggested
reason,
that
only
the
1 year
focus
probation.
on this is really hurting Republicans ahead of midterms. What's
That
his
doesn't
argument?
make sense, right?
I gotta look into
He
this guy
said
more.
that there was a lot of momentum,
2002
and that everyone was talking about
arrest for the bomb
politics
threat,
and the
you get
midterm
1 year
elections,
probation. But he
and
has a
sort of
record
the
before that. It's not like
growth that he
it's
believes
his first
Republicans
offense.
have heading to the
Maybe it
polls.
was-
And he said
maybe if
that
you look into
clearly
details of
changed,
the-
and that the news cycle was taken over
case.
by this story. And so that was his
Look at
argument,
details of
and
the
he
case,
was
maybe it's
encouraging
like,
Republicans to
"Oh, I
go
was
out
joking."
and
Yeah, I saw that
vote.
photo.
Of course, he has several other
yoking
things
it.
that he is trying to call attention on, including sending troops to the southern border, as he has made immigration one of his key campaign issues heading into
yeah,
the midterm.
his
So
first
I think
offense,
we were seeing so
1991,
many images of the
was
caravan
third-degree grand theft.
and understanding what he was doing,
A
what
felony,
actions he was calling
which he
for
pled guilty
in
to.
order to handle that situation. But I think he feels like those were replaced
2 years
by
probation.
stories about tracking down whoever was responsible for sending these suspicious packages. And so perhaps that's why
He was arrested on
used the
drug
quotes
charges in
bomb stuff. We
2004.
can never begin to analyze why he says what he does.
He was
but
accused
certainly
of
it's clear he
possession
was annoyed
and sale
that
of
attention was
steroids.
being taken away from the midterm race.
Weijia Zhang, Weijia, thank you very much for joining us.
Sure.
We're going to take a quick break. We've got more coverage of this new arrest when we return.
And that he was sentenced to 18 months probation. That's a lot of probation this guy's getting.
Yeah.
You'd think like a lot of other people would be in jail for like, listen, you need to learn your lesson. Here's a year or 2 in jail. Even if it's minor offenses, it's like constant probation. They're gonna lock you up sooner or later. Daniel says cookie cutter pastry profile. Right? Which is why it's gonna get people like suspicious as fuck. They're like, okay, this seems way too convenient. He has a white van with photos of people in Targets and like the Target thing.
Yeah, like it's cartoonish.
Trump forever, or whatever, posted on a van.
Shows him on a tank, like shows him slimmer than usual.
Yeah, window to window of all this like meme looking type stuff. That's very weird. Also, all these fucking arrests with he's only getting probation out of all this.
If it was you, you'd be we would never see you again. You'd be one of the
he did
dangerous ones.
He was in 2014 arrested for, I think it means petty, but it says petite theft charge in violation of probation. He was sentenced to 30 days in jail. filed for bankruptcy in 2012. He was arrested on theft charges in Dade and Palm Beach counties in 1992 and 2015. This guy just stays in trouble, but seems to get off light.
Oh, he's consistent.
Yeah, consistently gets off light.
Cool if I, as until some breaking, you know?
Yeah, 5 minutes until the...
Oh, okay. I'll probably just keep doing this.
Political commenter Rochelle Ritchie says Sayoc sent her threatening messages after she appeared on Fox.
So I'm gonna body you.
Yeah. She looks plastic as fuck.
We are continuing to follow the apprehension of this suspect who was arrested, 56-year-old Cesar Sayoc. He was picked up in the Plantation, Florida area. We are continuing to stay on this story and bring you the latest. I want to bring back in Ron Hosko. He's a CBS News security consultant and a former assistant director of the FBI. Ron, do you think that authorities will rule out that he didn't have any help? Is there a way to tell this early on?
Well, I think, Rita, they will be looking very closely at what his communications have been. If he really got onto their radar yesterday,
CIA clandestine
I would think they would have issued subpoenas for telecommunications providers, internet service providers yesterday. When he started looking better and better to them as a subject.
What was the surgery reference?
And they are poring over his communications. That would be to include any kind of electronic device that allows them to track where has he been in the last week, 2 weeks, who has he communicated with, looking at friends, family, co-workers, to understand what does his network look like, try to interview all of them as quickly as possible to see, is there a possibility that he was very close to somebody who was like-minded, that was always with him, that would have been trusted enough to, engage in this sort of a plot.
That's interesting.
They'll be looking at that with great urgency.
Entertain the idea of more than one person.
Probably started, as I said, as soon as he started to really warm up on the list of possibles. They would have been looking at the, to issue those subpoenas and start looking at that quietly as soon as they can get it. And so they'll know, I think, very quickly. Are we dealing with a person who is acting entirely by themselves, or is this person in regular communication? Have they been texting with somebody? What do those texts look like? Law enforcement, depending on the device, has the tools to take a cell phone and exploit it very quickly. Take a look at it, at a high level. What are we dealing with? Who are the communications? What's the frequency of communications? Yeah. And at least give themselves some level of confidence that this is likely a person acting alone.
Ron, are you surprised that they were able to, law enforcement was able to apprehend a suspect so quickly?
Getting probation for it.
Yeah.
Don't do that again. I know you have a prior criminal history.
Somebody comment this morning, an anchor asking a guest, when do we start to get impatient? And actually, that question indicated that he was starting to get impatient. And that he suspected others would be.
You did it again.
And I know there's been predictions out there. Look,
time out.
The FBI has dealt with the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, that took years to unravel and figure out, and ultimately took his brother and the publication of his manifesto to read that and say, I think I know who this is. It's my brother.
Third-degree grand theft.
And then you have cases like down in Austin earlier this year that took about 3 weeks from beginning to end.
But then,
and so, I had great confidence law enforcement would find the subject and apprehend them.
30 days.
But the timetable is always dicey, even with 10 or 12 devices.
So that's just weird.
If he didn't leave enough clues, if he didn't leave fingerprints, if he worked in a sterile environment from beginning to end, that could have been accomplished. Fortunately, it likely wasn't accomplished.
Music
Ron,
for Life
if you
says.
can hang on for just a second, I want to bring in our next guest, Brad Galvin. He's the
retired
resident agent in charge for the ATF. He's also an independent security consultant. He joins me now by phone. Brad, as we're talking about this investigation, what happens now?
I don't see that as impossible.
The investigators are going to
I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're just going to say, well, Trump was talking a certain way, and he inspired guys to put bombs in mail and send it to people.
Words matter. You're fine.
It's Trump. Trump needs to cut down the rhetoric and stop exposing, spreading rumors.
I'm not sure what they have already. They must have enough.
Give me that camera.
They don't realize that people would be upset with these guys regardless because the fucking internet exists. Everyone has all this information on these guys.
There's still a lot of work to be done.
All right, Daniel says family surgeon worked on Oriental eye conversions, making them look more Western. I heard about that on Joe Rogan's podcast.
That shit's creepy.
Yeah, it's dark shit.
They're going to look for similar components to try to tie them to any of the components, the packaging, the internal components, the explosive fillers.
Sounds creepy enough to fit into this fucking story. How about that? It makes sense.
There's a lot of work to be done. The PVC piping that was used, they're going to see if they have some similar devices.
Brad, you talk about tying the bombing components to the suspect.
And the news, we're watching right now, CBS, what would you want to ask? Other news organizations are not going to be talking about
ask him,
these type of ideas.
He's going to talk to you. You want to ask him, how he made it. You have a pretty good idea because you have intact devices. But you want to know if there are any additional devices. Did he send any others out there? Are there still other devices that are in the mail system that potentially could harm someone? You also want to know what his intent was. Was his intent to actually detonate a device? Because as of today, we have no detonations, which is unusual. So did he create these?
The Washington Examiner is saying he was
or was it more to
once a male stripper?
He was very successful at.
I don't know how relevant that is, but
are there additional devices out there? Where were they mailed to? Who were they sent to? And then you try to get those out of the public area as fast as you can.
There were those pipe bombs, supposed pipe bombs, that were also sent. What do you make about the nature of those particular pipe bombs?
Pipe bombs are, in my experience, the most common type of explosive or improvised explosive device that I saw throughout my 30-year career. They're simple, they're unsophisticated. You can make them from things that line around your house, go to the Home Depot or any hardware store or electronic store. Very crude and unsophisticated, but extremely lethal and dangerous. And you can make them as sophisticated as you want to if you add electronic componentry, circuit boards. But at its very base level, they can be a very simple and very unsophisticated, but yet a very lethal device.
Were these things
you
even
talk about
made
those
to go
devices,
off?
Simple, unsophisticated, but potentially very lethal.
I've seen diagrams. I don't know how accurate they are, but they showed the timer. The timer that was on the bomb.
Well, that is one way of creating distance.
They showed the timer that was on the bomb, and then
do this with the intent of getting caught. So
and then looked that exact timer up on Amazon, and there was no alarm on it, which meant it had nothing to do with the bomb going off. You need some sort of switch to go off.
Disassociate themselves with those devices.
Apparently. I don't actually know that, but that's the story I'm hearing. This press conference better come up with some shit, or people are going to...
created a victim-activated device.
Who knows what they're going to do, but they're definitely going to rip this story apart.
Is just trying to create distance and not get caught.
Brad, very grateful you can join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rena.
You bet. Coming up, we're awaiting a briefing from the Justice Department on this arrest, and this comes as we learn that there's been an additional target, one package sent to the Bay Area addressed to billionaire donor Tom Steyer. He's the man behind the Need to Impeach project, which calls for the president to be impeached. We're also trying to verify reports that Senator Kamala Harris was also a target.
Wow, what do you know?
Now we're going to take a quick break. Much more to get to. Stick with us. We'll have the latest when we return.
So we got 2 more bombs sent out. One to some billionaire dude that's created something for impeaching Trump. And Kamala Harris. Well, let's start with the billionaire guy who sounds... The way that sounds like a corrupt dude.
It's like, we just figured out that. Like, you just found it? Was it in the bush?
Don't fight homelessness. Let's get Trump impeached, and then somehow homelessness will end. It's not like I have $1 billion fucking to do anything. I use my message for politics, not for helping people. And then you have Kamala Harris, who is once again well known to be corrupt. I believe she had a chance to get prisoners released I guess because of overpopulation maybe in the prison system in California. And what happened was, I believe she kept prisoners in so that they can use them to fight fires in California. Basically advocating for slave labor. But
I don't know if that's true or not.
4,000 troops. I don't know. Daniel Dallin, or Dalen. Sorry if I screw your name up. Sayoc Tactical Group, STG, has been a leader in mission-relevant integrated combatives training for the DoD, its Defense Department, Naval Special Warfare, and U.S. Army Special Forces. I don't know, is that connected to this guy? Is it family members? Anything like that? I mean, we're basically watching this like most people are, right? We're just soaking in all the information we can and then looking at it logically and rationally. But honestly, I have no clue. I guess not.
We are continuing to follow the investigation into the bombs delivered to top Democratic political figures and critics of the president. Today, speaking at the White House, the president called
Same
the
feeling
mailing
lines,
of
I
bombings
believe.
terrorizing acts that have no place in our
true.
country.
I'd like to
I have
begin
no idea.
today's remarks by providing an update on the packages and devices that have been mailed to high-profile figures throughout our
And
country
just the other day, we were
and a
playing
media
the,
organization. I am
the
pleased to
Kuwaiti
inform
ambassador's
you
daughter,
that law
right?
enforcement has
played a starring role
apprehended
in the
the
first call
suspect
for.
and taken him into custody.
Yeah, I watched it. So,
It's an incredible job
for
by
people who are turned off by
We've
any type
carried
of
out a
conspiracy,
far-reaching federal, state, and
well,
local
sometimes there's a
investigation
shitload of evidence
to
pointing
find
in
the
the
person
direction.
or persons responsible for these events.
But usually the most
These
glaring
terrorizing
thing for
acts
evidence
are
is
despicable and have
the official story.
no place in our country.
Those are the things that gets more people looking into
I've
shit,
instructed
brings up more evidence,
authorities to spare
which
no
leads to the
resource or
conspiracy
expense
theory,
in finding those
and
responsible
a story that
and
makes
bringing
more
them
sense
to
than the
swift
official
and
stories.
certain justice.
So, if they want to, if this is some sort of conspiracy and they want to cover it up, this story better be really good.
Whoever it may be,
It better
to the
make sense.
fullest
If it does not,
extent of the law.
the way the news made it sounded like it's not going to make
We
sense.
must never
But
allow political violence to
who knows
take
what they're
root
going
in
to
our
officially
country.
say.
Cannot let it happen.
It's supposed to happen
And
at
I'm
2:30.
committed to doing everything in
Says
my
soon right
power
there.
as president to stop it. And to
So,
stop it.
there's always delays with this.
Stop it. I have just concluded a briefing with the Department of Justice following the apprehension of the suspect. I want to applaud the FBI, Secret Service,
There's
Department of
people on Twitter
Justice,
talking about the guy's
U.S.
race and
Attorney's
shit.
Office for the
It's like-
Southern District of New York, the NYPD,
Who gives a fuck?
and all law enforcement throughout the
That's
entire
part of their
country.
team playing argument.
Don't give a fuck.
These
What?
people have worked so
Like I
hard.
said, you're gonna have dumb
and to
stories
have
on
done
either
it so
end.
quickly. It's looking
I
like
think they're dumb stories.
you're looking
Now,
like
if the news
it's a needle
uses
in a
this,
haystack. How do you do this
news
so quickly? They've done an
and
incredible-
Democratic, like strictly
incredible job.
Democratic voters, vote blue no matter what, people. If they're saying, oh, another white guy did this,
But
then you
bottom
kill them with
line
that
is
story.
Americans must
But
unify.
otherwise, it doesn't mean
And we must
shit to
show
me.
the world that we are united together in peace and love and harmony as
I thought
fellow
he was Native
American
American.
citizens. There is no country like our country.
I was like Vanderlei
Or
Silva.
Every day we
Latino or
are
something.
showing
Vanderlei Silva.
the world
Yeah.
just how truly great we are.
It's his long lost brother.
So, you are really very special people. I wanted to say that before our little talk. And I appreciate the time you've given me. And Boy, one day, one of
Sayoc, I'm going to say that. Tactical trainers are
this
also
morning, the president took to
instructors
Twitter to
in-
criticize the media coverage. He tweeted,
Sayoc
Republicans
Cali group.
are doing so well in early voting and at the polls, and now this bomb stuff
all that's
happens,
true, man, there's a
and the
lot of
momentum
fucking
greatly slows.
connections
News,
there.
not talking politics.
I should feel like Daniel should be on.
Well, this
fucking
comes after he
YouTube
slammed
right now.
CNN
We
on
should be
Twitter in the
watching
middle of the
him.
night for criticizing him for the
Daniel?
bombs. He says comparisons to 9/11
Daniel?
or the
She got all
Oklahoma
this
City
information and
bombing
connections,
are
man.
ridiculous.
Oh, he's probably
Joining me now,
letting it be
Julia
known on
Manchester.
Twitter,
She's a reporter
but-
for The Hill. Julia, thank you for joining us. I want to start on the president's latest comments today. He tweeted out a little bit earlier that the bombs were a terrorizing act, and he praised law enforcement. What stood out to you from his comments this morning?
You know, I think you're seeing really two sides of President Trump and how he's reacted to these developments over the past week. You know, we've seen earlier in the week when he first addressed the bombings at the the suspicious packages, he essentially said, you know, he repeated this call to unify and that we need to tone down the rhetoric. However, he then appears at campaign rallies, which are really where he feels most comfortable, where he's unscripted, where he can say whatever he essentially wants, and he really goes after his critics and CNN, which is a news organization that has, you know, tangled with the president, and the two enjoy a very contentious relationship. So you're seeing
all these guys are probably
two different
still
sides of the president today. But it was interesting to watch these remarks today because he was calling for unity, he was calling for toned down rhetoric to really come together. However, he didn't really name anyone who was shipped a package over the past week who received
my
these
team.
Now I have a penthouse in Manhattan.
Now I tricked myself.
That was our conversation to let you know that
No,
we
I tricked
are
myself
awaiting a
into
briefing
believing
from
I've
federal
been doing the
officials
right thing all the time.
on the suspect accused in a string of mail bombs. For more on this, we have Ron Hosko. He's a CBS News security consultant and a former assistant director of the FBI, and our Jeff Pegues, CBS News Chief Justice and Homeland Security correspondent. Jeff, I know you're at the briefing right now, just about to take place any moment now. What are some of the questions that we hope might get answered?
Well, I think one of the important questions is what was the big break here, tracking down this 56-year-old suspect. Of course, it happened this morning. He is under arrest, and you will have here a who's who of the American justice system. The Attorney General will be speaking, as well as FBI Director Christopher Wray, the Commissioner of the NYPD, James O'Neill, and many others as they discuss this big case.
And Jeff, as you talk
guys,
about what we really want to know, you know, about the suspect and more details,
what is
has law
Trump's
enforcement said
rhetoric
anything
have to
about
do
any
with
more
the,
packages potentially still in the
influencing
mail?
the bomber?
Well, listen, I mean, we're still hearing
That's
these
not a real question.
reports
Get
of
out.
potential packages out there. In fact, all week, federal officials have been warning to stay vigilant, and local officials in New York saying, if you see something, say something. So the concern is out there that there could be more suspicious packages in the system. And so we will ask them about that too, whether people can rest easy that all of the packages have been accounted for. That's still an unanswered question.
And at this hour, Jeff, what do we know?
People on Twitter saying Sayoc was a
56
registered
years old.
Democrat.
We're told that he lives in
Once
the
again,
South Florida area.
that's the same thing as the race argument.
He lives with his mother, someone who
I want to hear the evidence of the case.
has been at times into bodybuilding.
They probably won't.
And then you saw that van that
Like,
was taken
it's
into
okay if you
can't answer that right now.
It's good to find out as much as you can about this guy, but to use some silly
Pence, as well as President Trump, and then mired in a swamp in one of the images were Democrats. You know,
the evidence on its own
that
right
is another
now
question that
should
we
be
have.
enough.
What was the motive here? Was there
That
a
other stuff you
political
can wait
motivation?
later.
There are many who've been following
you're
this
gonna
case
even
who
use
say
it
that,
at
of
all.
course, there was. And so that will be one of the important questions that the Attorney General and others here will have to answer.
All right, Jeff Pegues at the briefing there. We expect more details. Jeff, thank you very much for joining us. I want to also bring in Ron Hosko, CBS News security consultant and former assistant director of the FBI. Ron, at this point, how do authorities rule out whether or not the suspect had any help?
They're poring over his digital footprint right now, Rena. They are looking at whoever he has intersected with for the last several weeks and given more time for the last several years. I'm sure that they're going to satisfy themselves relatively quickly. Either they need to look at other people or that they're relatively sure that this is kind of a loner. Isolated,
There's no possible way it's a loner.
Not a
You
big
can't
circle of
use
friends.
that.
You know, this sort
It's
of
absurd.
activity,
People will rip that apart.
I think alone is enough to deter other rational people and keep them away from somebody like this, assuming, of course, that he is the right person. But I think that the FBI, in getting a full assessment of what is his pattern of life, does he have employment, what's his circle of friends and circle of trust look like, I think they'll have pretty good confidence by the end of today that there are other people who need a hard look, or that this is a lone actor.
And Ron, you have very high up in the FBI, particularly in these types of investigations. What are you watching for? What do you hope might be answered in this press conference?
It's like,
well, like Jeff, I'm looking for a couple of basic questions that go to motive, capability, intent. Did he look at anything to build these devices? Was he technically proficient in any way? Or were these, in effect, Hollywood bombs made to look very, very threatening, and they certainly had the desired effect, but incapable of triggering themselves or being victim activated or actuated by some activity by somebody opening them up and triggering an explosion. So I'm looking for
I love how it's blurred.
And I'm also interested in hearing more, because we've already heard inkling about this gentleman's competence, his mental competence, and what's going on in his mind. So I think there's a number of unanswered questions. Key among them.
Your number one question should be
is there anything else that is in the mail system?
If you want this story to be credible, that should be your number one point.
Comes near it.
How did this mail get all the way to New York?
Cesar Sayoc, the suspect, 56 years old, picked up in South Florida. What more stands out to you about his
he flew there and flew back.
Well, a series of prior intersections with the law.
Put the package in a rock.
There's reports of prior terrorist threats. We had talked before
Which means
about
it would have to be other
threat
people.
streams that the FBI is responsible to evaluate and very often investigate. U.S. Capitol Police has a similar responsibility with their protectees. Secret Service, the same, as do state and local law enforcement jurisdictions. So we've seen in his background, we don't know if it tracks this exact sort of activity.
Planning for a diss track for Eminem. Suddenly gets arrested.
Looks like somebody capable of communicating in an ugly way and in a criminal way. That for law enforcement, I'm sure, got everybody's attention fairly quickly. The fact that he has a criminal record is very helpful in matching fingerprints, potentially DNA, because typically fingerprints are on file after a felony arrest or a felony conviction. So the FBI would have something to compare lifted prints, question fingerprints on the devices, on the packaging. And if they were to have a match of a fingerprint, that's pretty darn good.
There's some people saying registered Republican, some people saying registered Democrat.
On one of these devices, matching to any individual
How is that
in the
bad?
United States. That's pretty darn good evidence that
Jared
I would be relishing.
We don't know, Ron, at this point what the probable cause might have been that was able to lead authorities to him at this point. But if you were to guess, we know that there was some sort of DNA match, we believe. We're going to get more details on that. But what do you think it might have been that led authorities to him?
Well, first, we should also, be, I think, crediting.
Anyways, Jared Hill says the whole thing is 100% synthetic.
To the public.
These demon rats, globalist scum, will do anything for power. It's beyond disturbing at this point. Hashtag false flag by Dems. Hashtag vote red across the board.
Made a call and said, hey, you guys need to put this guy on your list. That could be, and it very often is, a great starting point. It's a tip from the public.
I see corruption on both sides, let's be honest, especially mainstream political figures.
Already. But if you get a tip that really elevates it, particularly if the tip comes with detail,
you got to be real about it.
Comes with some substance.
It's not all Democrats and it's not all Republicans.
The person taking that tip or somebody else can run up a criminal record and say, terroristic threats. South Florida.
That's the storyline everyone should be following. Like, has this person done something that's corrupt?
Near Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Just look at that. Not saying that this guy had the intention of, these are corrupt guys, or I'm going to send this out to them because they're corrupt. I think if he really did do it, he sent it because they were prominent Democrats.
And with a past
looking at it
and the
realistically,
van and what we know about this person so far,
all these people happen to be into some
running right
nefarious
towards it,
things.
if he was warming up as
Maybe
a
we should
subject
talk about
yesterday,
that.
it's been
Oh,
reported
maybe he did it because of
that
this.
surveillance was put on him
Expose
yesterday
them,
sometime.
but these guys are not going to do that. They go to their
Rightfully
parties,
so.
they have
That
dinner
very
with
often
them.
happens
They're
when
not
you
gonna
start
say
to have
that.
a subject
They're not
or
going to throw this in
multiple
as a
subjects that
motive.
you start to like.
They're just going to say, oh, Trump
the
criticized
word
him.
is put out, put surveillance on them 24/7. Let's establish a
What
pattern of life.
parties?
Let's find out where they are. Because
Brandon
if we get to
says,
probable cause, we want
what
to make
has
be able to make
happened
good
is a
decision.
proof of
Do we stop
concept.
them right
All
now?
materials that
Where
could
do
be
we
found
stop
in a
them? How do
home
we
made
stop
bomb
them? All of that
to make a
comes
bomb
into
were present in those
judgments and the
packages,
decision-making
and every
by
single
the
one made
senior
it to its
leaders.
destination.
Ron, it was Monday
Watch
night
for
that this first
copycats.
package was sent out, and
Good point.
Friday. By Friday
Good
morning,
point.
essentially, he was picked
But,
up. What do you make of the timeline?
Like I
and how long
said,
it took to catch him?
in my mind, like there has to be
Well, I think it's
accomplices
great
or at the very
that,
least
look,
copycats.
all of our expectations,
Otherwise,
I
it
think,
doesn't
tend
make
to get
sense.
raised by a couple of things.
How's this guy getting the
One,
mail all the way to New
speculation
York?
by folks who've come out of the
Misspelled
law enforcement
names.
ranks.
I know.
Saying we're going to find him,
This
we're going to
dude,
get him
no
soon.
no
All
U.S.
this,
Postal Service markings on it at all. Just
resources, the
6
collective
stamps
resources
laying
of
near
the
each
Joint
other.
Service Task Force.
Like someone has to
of the
approve those things to
participants
go
in that
through,
task
right?
force.
Or they just
You're
send it
talking
back.
about a massive amount of
Not only
not
that,
people.
this dude must have like
but
you know
technical
the
resources
world's
for
most
these devices
fast twitch
that
cabs
render
and
them safe
quads
to
because he must
share
have leaped
intelligence
states and shit.
across the
He
best
was
agencies in law
pushing
enforcement
steroids.
in America.
He was.
With this
You
combination
saw
of
that
folks.
side post.
So I
He's
think
like-
expectations were getting raised as the
See
days
that
went by
motorcycle
that
too?
we'd have
Yeah, I
a
get
quick
high on my own
solution.
stuff.
Oh, that's right. He
I'm
was a
happy
motorcycle.
for all of the
He just
participants
dodged those
and for these
toll booths and
victims,
shit.
the
Those
targets
checkpoints.
and future targets.
He did a
that
wheelie as he
appear
was
to have a quick
flying through,
solution.
man. Yeah.
So good for all of them. I think law enforcement,
Unbelievable.
in my estimation, during
even
this
that,
has
he's
looked
got-
nothing but professional,
you can't do
capable,
that.
competent, ready to go.
Again, you expect
and going
What
to
are these
get their
bombs?
man,
It's like,
and
you
now it
expect
looks
me
as
to
though they
believe all
have.
this shit.
My fear was
They're gonna
the
have
opposite
to
of that
say
we'd had
multiple
maybe a Ted
suspects.
Kaczynski.
There
where
is no
this
other
person had
fucking way
wiped all
around.
of the evidence clean.
News
There
reports:
wasn't a
Freeway
digital
Ricky has
footprint
just
that
been
was
arrested
trackable
as an
readily
accomplice
to him,
to
and we were in
Cesar
for a longer
Sayoc.
siege. With the holiday season, the package
the way
sending season
the way they're
coming
saying
up,
they caught
that
the way
is-
they're saying
that
they
would
caught
be
the
a
guy.
chilling set of circumstances
couldn't
that
you
was
use
involved in a
cameras
case
and
like
shit like
that several years ago.
We already shown that
here
these
in the
can't get through in the
Northeast
mail.
and
So
to significant distributors.
a lot of
It
these
was
would
an
have to be
extortion
hand-delivered.
case involving packages.
That's
And I tell you, as you're
camera
rolling into
footage.
the holiday season, that is a daunting thought that we're going to potentially have people at risk
Telling you,
while somebody's putting
really,
deadly
that way
packages
seldom.
either in stores or in the
Telling
mail.
you.
So
Don't believe me.
I'm happy for these guys that they got to it. And I'm of course thrilled by the
Keep
timeline.
peddling
I'm sure
shit.
they are too.
You
'cause
look so Native
I guarantee you,
American.
there's a lot
Huh?
of tired
This
people
dude?
right now.
Someone
I
said
think
that on
you're
Twitter.
absolutely
And I
right.
looked at him. I'm like,
When
he
you
could be
look at
Brazilian.
sort of the charges, what kind of
looks
charges
Filipino.
might someone like this
You don't have
man
to look
face?
Yeah, I think the
Does it look Fili- he could have just
composing,
saying
building,
families from Philippines.
Could be-
and putting
could
in
be
the
Filipinos.
mainstream a dangerous device,
Philippines, the
a
Philippines.
destructive device like these devices is going to bring a serious
with
sentence.
Canada.
Let's assume that he is competent, fit to stand trial,
From Canada.
and is
Canada.
duly charged and convicted.
Canadian.
I think he can expect a significant sentence just because of the disruption, in part who the targets were, but just the disruption, the threat to the mail system writ large. That exposure would go way up if somebody lost their life as a result, and that would be somebody lost their life because of a detonation or somebody lost their life responding to one of these incidents. I think his exposure would go way up, but I think he's in for a serious sentence that could be 10 years or more.
Ron, we are just getting a 2-minute warning, I'm told, from my producers for this live press conference. But I do want to ask you, Ron, when you look over this,
Daniel
and the
says
FBI
definite
deals with a case like
Filipino.
this, how concerned are
I'm
you
just saying the way it
with
looks,
copycats at
man.
this point?
You know, I think that will start to tail off. I've been very concerned about copycats in this sort of event, as well as with the active shooters. You know, sometimes you get the sense of that in their mind there's a competition, and it's a deadly
There they go.
competition.
They're gonna take your guns.
Threats seem to go up on the back of threats.
Take my
Others who are misguided and acting criminally sometimes like to call in some copycat.
If you're a Trump supporter, prepare to
activity.
be
To watch the show,
heavily
to watch
examined.
the law enforcement response. I hope
Apparently,
this
if you
serves
support,
as a deterrent
right? That
to
seems so
others
set up.
who might think about
He has a
that.
van
Law
with memes on
enforcement
it.
will track back
So
to
now,
you,
if you're on the
and there
internet
will
and
be
you're
a
putting
price
up like
to
a
be
funny
paid for
meme
it.
or something,
Hopefully, there's a suitable deterrent there.
we need to
and
investigate
there's
this.
those who can calculate that and say, yeah, this isn't for me, I'll do something else.
All right, Ron
Are you
Hospital
bald?
joining
Do
us.
you look like
Ron,
Vanderlei Silva
we
as
are
well?
standing by.
Get him,
I see our
get him!
gaze there in the front
Is that
row,
Pepe Frog?
as the Department of
Is that a
Justice
threat?
is going to be briefing us any moment now. When you look at this case overall,
Are you calling
though,
people
Ron,
NPCs?
we talked about how this
See
man
that?
is
They're
really
making us wait.
very open.
That's a power move.
In the sense he had a social media profile. You were talking about how you were worried that he might not have any sort of digital footprint. We heard from a lawyer earlier who represented him that he was very, you know what, Ron, I apologize. It looks like they are taking the podium at this point. We're going to take you to the Department of Justice right now, who we are hoping will give us new details, some more details on exactly who this
Here goes
suspect
the
was,
press
56-year-old
conference.
Cesar Sayoc, who was picked up at Plantation, Florida, and believed to be an important suspect, if not the suspect, in these mailing bombings. Let's listen to Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
Ooh, fuck boys up.
Thank you all for being here. Over the past week, more than a dozen suspicious packages have been sent through the United States Postal Service to a media outlet, a Hollywood actor, and at least 7 high-ranking current and former political leaders in the Democratic Party. This is utterly unacceptable. Political violence or the threat of violence is antithetical to our vigorous system of self-government. It is a threat to that respect for law and process that allows our people to accept legislation, elections, court rulings with which they do not agree. This is the central feature of our system of government. You advocate for your beliefs enthusiastically, but we peaceably and lawfully comply with the results. Please know that from the beginning, this investigative team has made this matter a top priority, focusing their great talents and expertise on neutralizing this threat. They have moved swiftly and professionally, using extraordinary technical expertise to apprehend the one alleged responsible. This is a demonstration of the skill, capability, and determination of our American law enforcement, the best in the world. So I am pleased to participate in this announcement that a suspect is in the custody of the FBI. I want to remind everyone that the defendant in this case, as in every case, is innocent until proven guilty. He has been charged today with 5 federal crimes, including interstate transportation of an explosive, illegal mailing of explosives, threats against former presidents and certain other persons, threatening interstate communications, and assaulting current and former federal officers.
It could be the postal.
For these charges, the defendant faces up to 58 years in prison. These charges may change or expand as the investigation proceeds. This is a law and order administration. We will not tolerate such lawlessness, especially not political violence. And so I want to thank FBI Director Wray and his team, all of our law enforcement partners who are here, ATF, Secret Service, Postal Inspectors, Capitol Police, and New York City Police Department, and the United States Attorney Berman of the Southern District of New York, and U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Alabama, Ariana Orsham. Federal, state, and local law enforcement officers from across this country responded immediately to the cause and contributed to this effort. We are proud of each one of them. I want to reiterate the defendant in this case is innocent until proven guilty. But let this be a lesson to anyone, regardless of their political beliefs, that we will bring the full force of law against anyone who attempts to use threats, intimidation, and outright violence to further an agenda. We will find you, we will prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. And now Director Wray, who's done an incredible job leading this effort over the last few days, he will give us the details of today's important arrest. Chris?
Fucking right.
Thank you, Jeff.
Dude has an oil, his hidden oil as a white cowboy hat.
As the Attorney General has confirmed, we have arrested Cesar Sayoc in connection with this investigation. As our investigation is still ongoing, I may not be able to answer questions about his background or about his motive. What I can say is that this was a nationwide investigation of enormous scope and of the greatest importance. Our investigation ranged from New York to Delaware to Maryland to the District of Columbia to Florida to California. And as it always does, the FBI responded with every resource we've got, including our Joint Terrorism Task Forces, our Counterterrorism Division, and our world-renowned experts at the FBI lab in Quantico. But and I really can't underscore this enough, we did not act alone, as you can see from the agencies and departments represented up here today. A threat of this scope and of this magnitude requires all of us working shoulder to shoulder. And today's arrest is a testament to the strength of our partnerships and what we can do when we all work together. I want to acknowledge the many partners who helped in recovering and transporting these IEDs to our lab in Quantico. This is dangerous and highly skilled, specialized work that requires great care, and we're incredibly grateful to all those who helped us in that effort in getting those devices to our lab from around the country. We can confirm that 13 IEDs were sent to various individuals across the country. Each device consisted of roughly 6 inches of PVC pipe, a small clock, a battery, some wiring, and what is known as energetic material, which is essentially potential explosives and material that give off heat and energy through a reaction to heat, shock, or friction. Though we're still analyzing the devices in our laboratory, these are not hoax devices. I want to focus for a moment on the amazing work of our folks at the FBI lab. Based on their initial analysis, they uncovered a latent fingerprint from one of the envelopes containing an IED that had been sent to Congresswoman Maxine Waters. We have confirmed this fingerprint is that of Cesar Sayoc. There is also a possible DNA connection between samples collected from pieces of 2 different IEDs mailed in separate envelopes and a sample previously collected from Sayoc in connection with an earlier arrest down in Florida. This is phenomenal work with the greatest pressure under an incredibly tight time frame. We see unbelievable work like this on TV and in Hollywood, but to see it up close in reality is something to behold. And we are so proud of our team at the lab for their work in keeping people safe and helping us to find the individual responsible. Late last night, we also turned to our partners in the Florida Department of Law Enforcement for confirmation of this DNA connection, and we want to thank them in particular for their very quick work. I also want to thank the men and women of the FBI's Counterterrorism Division who remain on high alert every to try to keep the American people safe from harm, and who move quickly and efficiently into action every single time. Today's arrest doesn't mean we're all out of the woods. There may be other packages in transit now and other packages on. So we need the help of everyone out there, every citizen, everyone in law enforcement, everyone we've got, to help with this investigation in the days to come. If you've got any information, please call us on our tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI or our email line tips.fbi.gov. No piece of information is too small. Every tip could be the one that leads to something very important. And of course, if you see something suspicious activity, please call your local authorities. We need all hands on deck. We need to stay vigilant. Finally, I want to thank our partners. Too many to name from across the country because we cannot do this work alone. Everyone up here today understands that, and we take that to heart every single day as we do the hard work together of protecting 325 million Americans. Now I'd like to turn the podium over to Commissioner O'Neill from the NYPD.
Thanks, Chris. Good afternoon, everyone. Of the men and women of the NYPD, quite frankly, all the people in New York City, I want to commend and thank all of our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners in this effort, including the Attorney General's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. Our NYPD detectives, along with FBI and ATF agents, postal inspectors, New York State Police, and many others, they are one team on our Joint Terrorist Task Force. The JTTF in New York was the first of its kind in the nation. It's been in business since 1980. Today, there are 300 investigators from 56 agencies. 113 of them are New York City cops. When it comes to terrorism in New York City, the NYPD doesn't do anything without the FBI, and the FBI doesn't do anything without the NYPD. That's a partnership that was forged in fire. In my 36 years in policing, our relationship has never been stronger. This case told that story again. New York City cops were side by side with FBI agents, many other agencies in Florida this morning. Together, they brought justice, as they always do. The wide experience of our agencies, coupled with the individual expertise of the members of the NYPD Bomb Squad, our highly trained emergency service unit, our Intel Bureau, our Counterterrorism Bureau, our patrol cops, who were the first to respond to CNN, all helped lead to today's arrest. I couldn't be more proud of the work each of them did in this case and the work they do every day. We said from the outset that we would identify and arrest the person or people responsible for these acts. We can make that promise because of the confidence we have in our ability to investigate in a deliberate and precise manner. Today's arrest means that New Yorkers and indeed people across our nation are safe, but as Director Wray said, there might be more packages out there, so everyone still needs to take caution. And if you see something out there, call 911, and in New York City we have a number also, 1-888-NYC-SAFE. I want to thank the members of the public who contacted the authorities with information during this investigation. New Yorkers don't back down, they step up every single time. We've been through things like this before, and much worse. I'm never surprised by the unmatched resiliency our city always displays. Thank you also to the media for broadcasting the photos the NYPD released, because it certainly helped workers around our city identify additional packages and help move forward with this investigation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Berman, United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. 5 days ago, on October 22nd, law enforcement recovered the first device from a residence of George Soros. Over the last 5 days, as more packages were found across the country, delivered to former presidents, federal officials, and public figures, our law enforcement community, federal, state, and local, has worked day and night together with other prosecutors from my office to identify and apprehend the perpetrator that has now happened. Today, my office has filed a complaint against Cesar Sayoc, charging him with multiple federal crimes for his insidious conduct. Specifically, the defendant is charged in 5 counts that include illegally mailing and interstate transportation of explosives and threatening a former president of the United States. As alleged in the complaint, the defendant mailed destructive devices to citizens of this country who currently hold or have held our highest public offices: President Barack Obama, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, former Vice President Joe Biden, former Attorney General Eric Holder, Congressperson Maxine Waters, U.S. Senator Cory Booker, former CIA Director John Brennan, and former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper. The defendant's conduct as charged is cowardly and reprehensible and totally anathema to our democracy. And now the defendant faces a potential total of 58 years in prison. This is an ongoing and active investigation. We will not rest until these crimes are fully investigated and the defendant or defendants are brought to justice. I want to take a moment to thank our partners, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, the FBI, the NYPD, U.S. Postal Inspection Service, New York State Police, the ATF, the hardworking career prosecutors and investigators in the terrorism unit of the Southern District of New York, and I would also like to thank the extraordinary cooperation we received from the Southern District of Florida. Thank you.
Nothing.
You gotta wait for questions.
Good afternoon.
I think.
My name is Gary Barksdale, Deputy Chief,
Say
United
something.
States Postal Inspection Service. First of all, like many of my colleagues, I'd like to thank all of our federal partners who participated in this nationwide investigation: FBI, ATF, Secret Service, New York Police Department, and the many state and local law enforcement agencies who provided valuable assistance. Truly, I can say this is the way law enforcement is supposed to work. This was a massive investigation, was much a collaborative effort, and was well coordinated with each agency bringing special expertise to the table. But I would also like to recognize the many postal employees who we think of as our eyes and ears. We appreciate the diligence and awareness. In fact, it was a postal employee this morning that alerted us to one of these suspicious parcels. We in the Postal Inspection Service have a great deal of expertise in responding to and investigating suspicious mail. Postal inspectors are trained to respond and investigate dangerous mail items in the mail. These dangerous mail investigation specialists are highly proficient in the use of state-of-the-art equipment. Fortunately, in this case, none of the devices detonated, and there was no injuries. However, postal inspectors will remain vigilant and monitor postal facilities to determine whether there are additional mailings that have not yet been discovered. We will continue to work with our law enforcement partners to ensure the safety of the mail, our postal employees, our customers, and the American public.
Daniel Dallin says, looks like Sayoc Tactical works closely with the NRA.
Good afternoon.
Can't seem to find a direct link to Cesar, but there's something there.
The other speakers have emphasized,
Service
I just want to
Director.
comment on the importance of cooperation here. We were in the forefront of this, with receiving early packages on Tuesday and Wednesday, and fully engaged the Joint Terrorism Task Force and other federal partners. I just want to acknowledge the great work done by the FBI, ATF, the Postal Service and inspectors, New York City Police, Capitol Police, and then the different states involved: New York, Florida, California, Delaware, Maryland, and even the District of Columbia. So, and I also want to spend just a few minutes to emphasize how seriously the Secret Service takes these threats, how important it is to provide protection to our protectees, including former presidents and the current president and vice president, and just thank our agents and officers and analysts who not only investigate cyber and financial crime, but provide world-class protection to our protectees. I think they've done outstanding work here.
What he's saying, they're all saying the same thing.
Just also remark that since Tuesday, along with Director Ray, this has been our #1 focus of the agency, is to find the perpetrators of these incidents and to bring them to justice. Thank you.
Imagine the earrings this dude must have.
Mr. Ray, can you tell us along the lines of how fast this moved? When did you folks isolate the thing?
So each of the devices was being brought through what are called total containment vehicles to our lab, and they were coming kind of seriatim. And we received some of them. The first two that we received were the devices that were sent to former President Obama and the DC package that was sent to Congressman Waters. And so the analysis began on that, I think, yesterday. And we were starting to receive information over the course of the last 24 to 36 hours.
So it was found yesterday.
I don't have the exact time, but that's the ballpark.
Question for Director Ray and Attorney General Sessions. Can you describe your reaction to when you got word that there was a latent fingerprint that might lead you to a suspect? And also,
Two bad questions so far.
Why the devices may not have exploded?
So what was the second part of the question?
Any sense of why the devices did not explode?
So on the first part, my reaction to hearing that we have a possible match just validated my unbelievable faith and confidence in the men and women of law enforcement, and in particular of the FBI lab. There's a reason why the FBI's lab is known as one of the very best in the world, and the folks who work there are extraordinary. And once I knew that they had a print, I was pretty confident that we'd be able to find the right person. As far as the devices themselves, it's important to say, as is in the complaint, that even if the devices, and we're still trying to determine whether or not they were functional, as they say, so we're doing all kinds of analysis on that to make a definitive determination, but they did contain energetic material which, if subjected to the right combination of heat or shock or friction, could be dangerous to the public, and the public should treat any device like that accordingly.
Attorney General Sessions, could you tell us plainly why was he targeting Democrats?
I don't know, other than what you might normally expect. He may have been appears to be a partisan, but that would be determined by the facts as the case goes forward, and I'm not able to comment on that.
That dude's a wizard. Not kidding.
We're not going to be discussing where the investigation stands at this time.
I'm just curious what role you think the rhetoric in the political arena might have played.
There it is.
And is that giving you more
words of some guy?
We're focused not on the talk, but on the work of the men and women of law enforcement here, and the work that was done over the last week is something that should make every American proud and grateful, and it's too early at this stage for us to be discussing motivation in this particular case.
Are you concerned that nasty political rhetoric might motivate someone who's predisposed to violence to act out?
We're concerned about people committing acts of violence under any motivation.
Kevin.
Director, do you believe that he's the only one involved in this campaign? And you continue to make reference to other devices that might be out there. Do you have any sense of how many that are still restrained?
So, as I said at the outset, and I think the Attorney General said as well, this is very much an active and ongoing investigation. We do believe that we've caught the right guy, but we also know that this is an ongoing investigation, and there's a lot of work still to be done, which means there's still plenty of unanswered questions.
We'll do last question. Well, that was my question.
Did you first brief President Trump on having the suspect in custody, and if you could say what was his reaction?
I'm not going to get into our discussions with the President. I will say that I received a very nice congratulatory call from the President shortly before heading over here, and saw his remarks that he made at the White House. And I think he, like every American, is and should be proud of the unbelievable work that was done not just by the FBI, but by all of our law enforcement partners across multiple states in this. I think Commissioner O'Neill said it well. The partnerships that exist in the law enforcement profession right now in this country are extraordinary, are better than they've ever been, and it's exactly what the doctor ordered for this country at this time.
Thank you so much.
That ass. And telling.
The FBI narrows it down to a fingerprint on a package that was intended for Congresswoman Maxine Waters. That's how they believe they were able to get to the suspect, Cesar Sayoc, and they also said that this is a man who could potentially be facing 58 years in prison. The FBI confirming that each of the 6 devices had PVs. There were 6 PVC pipes, clocks with batteries, a battery in them, some sort of an energetic material that gives off heat and energy that was reactive to heat.
As they know so far.
These were not a hoax. They were not hoax devices, they said. And they said it was a relationship forged in fire. The FBI working side by side with NYPD and various law enforcement throughout the country, saying that this was an expansive investigation, and that they're grateful to all the law enforcement who helped to put this together. 13 IEDs that were sent to individuals is what they're saying. And that the FBI responded with every resource available to them. They did warn that there is the potential that there could be more mailing of these bombings still out there. They are trying to track down exactly what might still be remaining. They also looked at the fact that the suspect is innocent until proven guilty. They made a point of saying that as well. I want to bring in Ron Hosco, who joins us now. CBS News security consultant and a former assistant director of the FBI. Ron, your take on today's press conference?
The FBI director also said
pretty buttoned up as we would expect.
That the explosives were real.
There were notes of
fake
by
or hoaxes.
Multiple speakers of the,
under the right circumstances, they
effort
would go off.
Here, the expansive nature of the effort, the professionalism that everybody involved exhibited. This, even though Rita, this was a pretty quick solution.
Open the package, boom.
This is no easy task
it's
to
not
coordinate the
fucking mail
activities
trucks and shit like that,
dozens, if not hundreds, of investigators in New York City in Delaware, in Washington, D.C.,
if his
in
intention
Florida,
was for it to
out
blow
on the
up,
West
it would have blew
Coast,
up on the mail
to
truck.
make sure the information, that the evidence is getting where it needs to go as quickly as possible.
If it needed heat or friction, that means
information and intelligence is
some sort of
being
mechanism
exploited within each agency and then across the Joint Terrorism Task Force participants, and certainly other agencies that were not law enforcement or JTTF participants. So
they said they caught the guy
and
found out who it
task here
was
to coordinate all of
because
that,
of a
make it seamless, and get to the right
fingerprint
result.
On one of the
it was, of course,
explosives,
nice,
the one sent to
and the
Maxine
director
Waters.
tipped his hat to all the hard work done down
used
at
that
FBI
fingerprint.
Quantico, the FBI
They used that
laboratory.
fingerprint to look at this
that
guy's
work
past
could have come
crimes
up
'cause he has a
dry.
criminal
You
record.
might have
So they
great
can just look him up
descriptions
in
of the
the database
components,
and
but
find him.
no name to be associated with it, or no face.
There are
And
probably
here
easier
that
ways to do that.
Basic police work
to
done
find out
well
who it was and find them.
recovers a latent fingerprint. Basic police work
can't imagine
done
there's
well
zero
in
camera
South
footage.
Florida
I'm sorry, but these
had
parking jobs,
fingerprints
man.
on file for the FBI
Must
to
be a
compare
bitch.
this subject to, and came up with a hit within
And the question
just a few
I
days
really
here.
wanted to hear
I think this is
was,
great
is there
law
any other
enforcement
people
work.
involved?
It's what we
they
expect. It's
didn't
what we
answer.
want.
What they said was
you can't say you're going to get it every
the
time. You certainly can't
investigation
get this
is
result every
ongoing,
time.
but they think
too
they
often I
have
think
the guy.
we compare what
Which
reality
makes
is
it
out there
sound
for
like
law
one
enforcement
guy, which means
to what's playing
some
out
guy
on
in
our
Florida
TV
mailing
screen
shit
at night
out
when we see shows like CSI
with no-
and other crime shows with this
looks like
you
no
know, heightened
markings of-
expectation
that had been through the
every
Postal
piece of
Service at
technology
all.
is available on every case.
And made it to
it's all
these
seamless
people.
and it'll be resolved within
CNN
45
literally
minutes or
opened
so.
theirs and took pictures.
Not always the case.
If I mailed a fucking
Here,
bomb to
these guys
someone,
really came together and got it done.
would it really
I think
get
the
to them?
comments reflected that today.
I mean, you look at how
I'm sure
expansive,
there's
we're
a
looking at the
screening
map here, just how
process for all these
expansive this
things.
was from East
a lot of
Coast
them
to
were
West
caught in
Coast,
Florida
from
that
Florida
were-
to New
that had
York to
addresses to
California. I mean,
somewhere
it's
else.
just
My fault.
remarkable
But
how many agencies had to be coordinated in this. What struck me, Ron,
The ones that did
I
get
remember
there
from
had
earlier
no
this
postal
week
marking
when
on
there
those
was
weird.
this bomb threat to
It's awfully
CNN,
weird.
and I was on the sidewalk coming into CBS, and a person from the bomb unit, I overheard a conversation saying to the other bomb unit member, you know, I didn't know, was this real? Was this real? And it was really legit. And it strikes me that this comment today from FBI Director Chris Wray, these were not hoax devices.
Right. This
actually credible possible scenarios, unlike these people.
Less CBS, more us. Need more us. Yes. Alright. So this was basically like, this was worse than the Seth Rich thing that we watched, to where there was actually more information.
This is a big tease.
We actually got a witness phone call. This was an absolute shit show, and people are gonna shit on it accordingly.
It's like you
straight up.
You build up Data 5000 versus fucking Kimbo Slice, and you're like,
Trump supporters and unbiased like conspiracy guys are gonna shit all over this, and I can't wait because I'm gonna be watching a lot of it. It's gonna be entertaining.
Me too.
So, if you like what we do here, which usually isn't this, we usually do other content, trying to save the world one video reaction at a time. Please subscribe. Always comment. And as always, especially if you're new here, give this video a giant pep boy thumbs down.